that showing up for everybody?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. So just real quickly, I'm James Deaton. I'm the executive director of the Great Plains Network. And you'll see a little bit of a change in the title of this talk. It's a bit of the research cyber infrastructure ecosystem. I've been fortunate in my role to work with a large part of the research cyber infrastructure, and many of us that have been working with these aspects have been trying to bring clarity to the resources, whether it's the network, the computing, or the people in the community. And so I just wanted to spend a few minutes here, just for those of you that don't know and understand why I'm talking from this perspective. The Great Plains Network is a nonprofit consortium. It's primarily these 6 states that are in the dark green, and the 3 states in the light green are affiliate member institutions. And so in Kansas, that means University of Kansas, Kansas State University, and Wichita State University have been the primary GPN members, but everybody in the state have benefits of aspects of GPN through CANREN, who the state networks working together are the real reason why GPN actually exists. They're the ones responsible for a large portion of the governance, large portion of the infrastructure and how it all comes together. And every one of the state networks involved in GPN are contributing to the operation of GPN. And so we're very fortunate. Fortunately, I don't know enough about my Zoom settings when I'm full screen sharing. I can't see people now, but I will say that Court Buffington is one of our executive council members, as well as one of our leader of the network program as the chair. And so GPN is all these folks working together over 2 decades, making some incredible things happen from a research networking perspective. And to give you an idea in perspective, here are the individual universities, and please don't call me out for the logos. I would love to get new logos represented on here, because some of those aren't quite appropriate, but those are the ones that were added back when this was put together. So again, GPN is all these states working together to help improve research cyber infrastructure and opportunities across the region. So from what I mean from an ecosystem is it's a mess. It's a lot of groups across a large number of areas, whether it's networking, whether it's the compute, whether it's the people. It's a large number of groups that target aspects of research cyber infrastructure. You know, for instance, on the chart here, I mean, you can just start seeing all these logos. It's just overwhelming. But they're all helping research happen using research computing and data. If you try to start mapping it, it's even harder, right? You know, some of those icons, some of those logos you saw on the previous slide, here they are, and trying to link the interactions that happen between subgroups and how they interact, how they can get stuff done, you know, to help researchers. It's very complex because some of you on this call, I don't know your backgrounds, but you know, you may have the opportunity to work with researchers. You may get to work with research computing folks. Do we have anybody? Of course, I can't. Let me see here if I can pop up the chat. Keep it open in case somebody says something here. If anybody is involved in research computing on the call, or directly supporting researchers, just say yay.
I mean, I am.
All right, thank you, Court.
But I probably don't count.
All right. Well, hopefully by the end of this call, if you're not, you'll know who you can talk to. And if you're passionate about making sure that the researchers have what they need, you'll be in help you get in a position to take a more active role in that. So I wanted to cover some of the ecosystem from the network perspective first. Many of you, and Court, I hope you didn't mind me sharing this. This is the traffic map. It's one of the coolest traffic maps in the entire country as far as showing the research data movement. So most of you, being this is Czech, should be very familiar with CANREN. They're responsible for the bandwidth getting in and out of the state and across in between the institutions, and it's one of the premier state networks across the country. They work together through other state networks in the region, and we all together figure out the best ways to connect to national research networks like ESNet and Internet 2 and peering services. And all of that is to help facilitate low latency, high performance bandwidth for meeting, of course, education needs, but also research data movement. And so we're just one small set of group of other research and education networks across the nation. Here's a map that the Quilt puts together. You can see there's 39 members of this consortium that all serve R&E in a variety of ways, but we all have that common goal of serving research and education. And in some cases, there are aspects like our part of the country where there's state networks that work together to do, do more together, like through GPN. And you see other groups like that if you start staring at this map. Other areas like us that have state networks collaborating through a regional effort. Ultimately, what most of you may be familiar with is the connectivity to Internet 2. Which is the primary national research network, education network across the US. But there's also these other aspects that a large amount of research data traverses in the country. ESNet, through the Department of Energy, is probably responsible for probably 40% of the research data in our part of the country. In some parts of the country, 80% of the traffic, just due to high energy physics, other data, large data aspects associated with DOE projects. And so GPN and part of the research cyber infrastructure is having great connections to these other national research networks. And then when you think you've got it, understood, you start looking at other groups. There's other NAC networks. This is something we used to be connected to called Pacific Wave. We still have interconnections via Internet 2. It gives us a global perspective. We have overlay networks that support research. This is a new project that's out of NSF called Fabric, which is providing 100 up to 400 gig or terabit, ultimately, paths just to experiment with network ideas, researching of the network on top of the network. So from the network perspective, there's you've got a very complex set of groups that are working together to help make sure that edge-to-edge aspects of research data can move and not be an impediment to a researcher trying to make the next best discovery. So really excited about some of these projects, and some of these partners have been fantastic to help establish some of the support framework for some of the other compute models that I'm going to talk about here in a second. I'm going to count on somebody that's willing to unmute to ask questions anytime. Again, feel free to interrupt on this. So there's the network. I want to talk about the research cyber infrastructure compute environment. In Kansas, you have the GPN members I'm very familiar with, K-State and KU and Wichita State. They all have research computing infrastructure that's available to the researchers on campus. And there's, to a degree, there's a lot of sharing of some of these resources between institutions and to other smaller institutions within Kansas. Across the region, there's other aspects like that. Many of the research universities have a large dynamic set of research computing systems on campus, and ideally great relationships to help make those available to smaller institutions. Outside of that, there's a national project, an NSF funded project that's actually coming to an end next year called Exceed. It's been around in various forms. And so when I say it's coming to an end, it's just going to come to its next generation in my mind. This used to be called the TerraGrid. It's been called Exceed for the past 5 years, and there was a 5-year period before that. But basically, when you hear the big national supercomputing centers that are available, Exceed is the coordinating effort for that. They bring together the resources, they work together to understand the network that's needed for those resources, and they provide a large set of support components to make those national resources scale well for researchers. Just as an aside, even though it says Exceed is going away next year at the end of August, the new project, and it's an NSF series of solicitations that are due next month. It's called Access. That'll be the new name of what's currently Exceed. It'll be done. Some parts will be very similar. Other parts will be quite different. Here's an older map. It was 2 years old. It doesn't reflect some of the great resources that have been put in California and Texas and up in Pittsburgh since this map was put together. But it highlights some of the compute resources that have been spread across the U.S. and supported through these grants. And so any researcher on your campuses, and in fact, you're going to hear me talk about a concept here when I talk about people called Campus Champions. All of you can get resources among these compute platforms so that you can become aware to help raise awareness, to make it available, even if you're not doing research. These are resources that you just have to check some boxes, sign up an account, flag yourself appropriately, and you'll have these resources so you can become familiar. So for instance, Jetstream is a project that's going to endure. It's basically a giant VM infrastructure that you can spin up pre-imaged VMs to tackle specific compute needs. So if you every one of you on the call can get resources to try those types of things out and help match it up to the researchers that are in need. To give you an idea of some of the use of Exceed resources, here's just a little report I ran based on allocations. They're called service units that get awarded to researchers. And you can see here, just in the past year, in K-State's situation, nearly 700,000 service units were consumed across all these various platforms. And again, these are not real dollars. I mean, there's NSF allocations that are awarded. There's opportunistic assignments that can be made depending on your use, and then other ways to get access to those compute platforms. And to have such a complex set of resources, there's a lot of training available, a lot of really good training available. 24, basically throughout the year, they've got training covering all aspects of using the storage, doing AI, ML, and on-site GPUs, how to scale up and use job schedulers. I mean, you name it, they've been developing this training for a number of years. And again, it's all available. And it's just a lot of it is just bringing awareness to the researchers that these resources are available beyond what typically can be funded and served on the campus. Another national research compute resource that I'm very excited about and has just been renewed for another 5 years with infusion of about $9–10 million is the Open Science Grid. And the great thing about this project is it provides a way so that high performance computing research computing providers at a campus level can opportunistically provide those resources to everybody, because there will be times where researchers on a given campus aren't keeping all the CPU spinning or all the GPU spinning. And so if you can opportunistically contribute those to a broader mission, everybody wins. And so this has been a project that's been around for several years. And collectively, it's the single largest computer on the planet because it's coordinating the usage of high research computing all across the country. And then one that I think more Czech folks may be familiar with is the Internet 2's Cloud Connect. They've been spending time making certain that we have really good connectivity to Azure and AWS and GCP. And I guess, this is more about the connectivity to those resources, but a lot of activity is being moved. A lot of research computing is being done on those commercial clouds. There's CloudBank, which is a coordinating effort from the NSF to make it easier for researchers to consume commercial cloud. And there's also each of those commercial cloud providers tend to have R&E allotments that they can assign based on a grant process. So particular example I really like and I wanted to share with this community was a project that happened about a year ago, a little over a year ago, where researchers at UCSD used those connections and the commercial cloud and was able to consume basically what they thought at the time, all the GPUs that were unused were already locked on to other, commercial or other uses. And we were able to do a 51,000 GPU burst to do some interesting modeling for some astrophysics. And I thought that was exciting because they actually used, if you see up in the top left of this picture, I'm sure it's tiny on some of your screens, but they used Open Science Grid technology to scale it up there. So we're getting to the point where on one computer you can submit a job that gets and consumes all the research, all the opportunistically available research computing across 100 different campuses, but also given credit availability, consume this with the same model in the commercial cloud, so that all the nuances of leveraging AWS versus leveraging GCP versus Azure are kind of shielded from the researcher. So just some really cool details about that project. I think it's fantastic. So in the midst of all this, of working with the commercial cloud, and we know that the large number of the folks in the commercial cloud are using Kubernetes and these resources to scale easily across different platforms. There's another compute model that's being developed, and we kind of started calling it the National Research Platform. And these were some of the initial partners and collaborators. And I want to say here, even though it says GPN, it's a collective. CANREN and all the other state networks in the region were working together behind the scenes to make this successful. But it's stood up. It's a nationwide Kubernetes platform that is complete. We're calling it it's more of like a potluck, friction-free compute platform. And so I try to challenge any group I talk to find out more about this project and get access, because there is no barrier. You don't have to sign up and get allocations. If you've ever played with Jupyter Notebook, or if you've ever wanted to learn about Kubernetes, or know somebody that does, and they're at an university, we want to make sure that they have access to the resources. So for instance, there's more GPUs now, but there's over 500 GPUs available. So if you're going through a course, even to do AI ML, you can spin up resources and do it here rather than worry about burning up credits on one of the commercial clouds, or using a time limited alignment or assignment through, say, Google's Collaboratory or one of the other bind books. And to give you an idea, here shows that there's over 8 petabytes worth of storage in the same system. So I'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but these are the research computing resources that kind of encompass the environment right now. Is it Marin or Marin? Marin.
Marin.
So you've got a great question. I think K-State has probably one of the better examples nationwide that they've talked about to a number of different groups for how to handle this. Of course, it's in the cloud and still for cost prohibitive. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you're in that environment, there's a lot of liability associated with it, and so it's just for now, it's at least easier to kind of pass that to the business partner and deal with it in the commercial cloud and allow that handoff and that discrete alignment to take place. There has not, our law, let me back up. All the NSF funded projects tend to value the openness of the research data and the sharing of results. And so there has not been a strong investment on the NSF side in that area as far as doing something on-prem, shared across institutions. NIH has had some projects that are looking at that, and I know that the Cloud Bank is working on ways to better make that process easier, so that you can, stand up environments for workloads in that realm and not get and do it opportunistically in the cloud space, which means getting spot instances and leveraging some of those the pricing that way. And so they're getting more creative and doing some of those things. But yeah, that's a tough one. I'm hoping
It just tends to be our faculty tend to deal with people data.
Yep.
And that means having all those controls on it. So we're finding it harder and harder to do those kind of workloads and not have to build our own stuff. So
yeah, I tell you, I know K-State with the RISE project, RISE activities. I don't know if anybody's on the call here, but I'm looking forward to learning more and more about that, because they're looking at aspects associated with having a great environment for that. And obviously costs are always going to be at the forefront of any of those discussions. But on this Nautilus thing, definitely anybody that loves to have some resources to explore ideas, this is, you can't, it's a friction-free compute environment that's catering to institutions. And I'll show you here how we've added to it here recently. So yeah, I talked about the network, we talked about the compute of the ecosystem. The most important part I had to save for last, the people. There's so much out there between the compute sources and the network sources and the variables between how those networks connect. You got to have people to make it easier. And so there's a number of national initiatives and an idea of a research computing facilitator. Any of you actually a facilitator? I know I kind of asked at the beginning in case somebody's joined. I don't see the participants in this view, so I don't know if I can call out here. There we go. All right, well, this will be great then. So from a research computing facilitator, they're folks that are helping the researchers actually use these resources. And so Exceed actually started a process called the Campus Champions. I think the number is slightly different from then, but here we list 663 champions from 315 organizations. These are folks that have made a commitment to share their CI challenges, their cyber infrastructure challenges and the solutions. They have mailing lists, they get together, they have participant funds available for these folks to get together at research computing events, get together several times a year. They also have allotments so that they can just have basically a bank of resources to use anything in Exceed without having to put together a specific science proposal. So the idea being that familiarity with the resource, even if they don't have the familiarity with the resource, they've got allotments that they can turn to a researcher and say, hey, instead of you having to go through all this paperwork to get an allotment to see if this is going to work as a resource for you, here's 10,000 service units. Go to town. Don't worry about it costing anything. Don't worry about having to file paperwork. And so it's a fantastic group to help do some of these things. In fact, Cloud Bank in just the past couple of weeks has enabled it so that any campus champions can sign up and get several hundred, I mean, it's in the several $100 range, but get several $100 worth of cloud credits across any of the cloud providers to be able to either work with ideas or just directly hand that off to a researcher to explore. So again, these are things trying to make the ecosystem simpler for everybody. I will say these are the champions that I found registered. Some of these folks, I think all of these folks are still at their institutions. There's not been an update in the site in some time. I will say also that I think the number is too small. I think that every institution in Kansas should identify somebody that can act as the campus champion just to take advantage of that larger community. And maybe even especially if you're in IT, enterprise IT, because I think it's critical to understand some of the things that the researchers are going through when they're consuming these growingly similar research computing resources. Like Maren, dealing with things in commercial cloud, it's the enterprise IT folks and the research IT folks are dealing with the same thing. So one takeaway here, and in fact, I have a to-do list. I like to assign homework. I think having more campus champions in Kansas just to take advantage of these already available resources is very important. Another people resource that's coming up very soon is the virtual residency. I don't know if anybody on this call has ever attended one of these. There's been quite a few now. I guess they started in 2015. But this has been a hybrid in-person and remote project for a number of years that helps all these aspects you see here. It helps with writing grants, helps with writing papers to be submitted to journals and to conferences. So if you ever wanted to be published, it's an actually very open call to hop on and contribute, just even if it's grammatical corrections. You can get published. And so I would encourage you all to take these slides. I try to make sure every link is blue or stands out in some fashion, but these are links that'll get you straight to more details so that you can sign up and tune in or tune out based on what makes sense as far as interest. Some of those, like for instance, at the next workshop, having helped contribute to the agenda, it's coming up in 3 weeks. They have sessions on how to talk to researchers, right? That might be a hard thing to do to help them use the resources that you even have on campus. Another group that's very interesting is CARC. Their whole purpose is to focus on the people aspect in this research computing at the institutions. So here you see the people network tracks that they coordinate, the researcher facing, the systems facing, data facing, and emerging centers. And I think especially for institutions that don't have existing research computing local, that's a fantastic group to find out how others have gotten to the point to fund their first ones with grant dollars, or how they were able to take on board compute maybe up to, at the next institution up the street and partner on some activities. And so it's a fantastic group. I just provided a snapshot of some of the types of calls and the regularity of the discussions. And one great thing about this group is they record most of their Zoom sessions and put them online, and they take incredible notes. So like if you search the archives for a problem you're facing, and then you can jump straight into the Zoom session and find out, people who have dealt with this. And I will again say, it's very intriguing, some of the things that are happening on the research cyber infrastructure side that is applicable for the enterprise IT to look at things in a different way. Some of the data transfer problems that they run into, and some of the tools that they use to do, totally saturate 100 gigabit links. It's pretty interesting for those of you, especially on the call, that are passionate about moving network data. To give you an idea, there's a lot of growth in this area. Everybody's realizing they got to do more with less as far as people, and so having these support structures on the people side is key. And so just want to make sure you're aware of that. And for those of you that do support research computing on the campus or trying to stand them up, there's actually they've had a professionalization workshop where they're actually defining an HR matrix, making it easier to put together positions for institutions to adopt to help match need versus capability. All right, here's another question for folks. Anybody familiar with the carpentries? I wish
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, Court, for speaking up. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with the carpentries. I've got a few slides in here because I really love the carpentries. I know GPN has maintained a foundation membership for several years now. University of Kansas has, and I know that about 3 or 4 other universities across the GPN region maintain a membership to the carpentries. But it's basically, this is the current snapshot of carpentries that are within the foundation, software, data, and library carpentry. And these are, this is a program that puts the act of the teaching of the material first, and comes up with an incredible set of resources to help researchers leverage tools that some of us might that are very work with Python and GitHub and or Git and Shell we might take for granted. It helps make that accessible for researchers or folks in managing information. And so we've been using this as a core to some of the grants that we've gone after and been awarded to help us streamline the education processes associated with high performance computing. In fact, there is probably a fourth circle that's going to be added to this soon for HPC carpentry. They've been very active taking particular lessons and adapting them to target research computing in particular. But right now, I saw Mary Walsh, KU is not only a member, but they host incredible sessions. Work with Jameen at KU in libraries. She's an incredible contributor to the mentorship program within GPN, and we have everybody that's passionate about the carpentries get together, because this is the fundamental act of helping enable the researchers to use these other resources. If you can't work in a shell, it's very hard to consume a large portion of research computing environments. If you can't have good revision control, you can't start tackling the acts of openness and reproducibility and resilience of the data. So I mean, there's so many things in the carpentries that really empower the researchers to really consume all these other resources.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
Might I add that KU's carpentries classes or workshops are open to others beyond KU, and those are typically there's typically some preference given to KU signups first, and then it's open to more general public, and those are always announced through CANREN's channels with our Cyberinfrastructure and HPC program. So if you're not tuned into that with Casey Russell, that would be a good place to hear about them. Casey is teaching with the KU team now, and I used to do that. Great bunch of people, and there are definitely people outside of KU attend.
Thank you, Court. I was actually gonna mention. I noticed the CANREN channel highlighting those opportunities for slots, because it's eye-opening. Even if you think you're proficient in some of these things, like here's the software carpentry, I showed the data carpentry, there's so many aspects and lessons that are involved in each. But even if you think you're familiar with some of these resources or that you would never take advantage of them, if you do have time to participate in one of those workshops, it can be eye-opening. It might really change the way you look at data. Like if you're bogged down in Excel spreadsheets trying to figure out how to do something, and then you sit down with R and go, there's an aha moment that just makes you be able to tackle more. And having those open slots available at some of the institutions are fantastic. And so I encourage you to hop onto CANREN's research channel, because they do a great job of sharing some of the information. And again, CANREN, thank you for getting some of the asks out for me recently to help on some grant models. All right. So a couple other national things from a people perspective. This is a quad chart. It's a couple of years old. It reflects EPIC, the Engagement and Performance Operations Center. We partner with them an incredible amount to help researchers, help us with research cyber infrastructure in the region. They can do a number of things. They worked with us at our annual meeting 2 years ago to help work with Dr. Welch out of K-State and do this amazing deep dive into the capabilities of the network and the compute to serve his needs. There's also Trusted CI, which is another NSF funded resource. I mean, these are resources that are out there from a people perspective that can help solve problems or help validate concerns. And a lot of people just aren't aware that they're out there. I know we're coming down to the end. I want to just spend a little bit talking about what kind of activities in our region apply in these areas. We have a great history across the region from an interstate collaboration perspective. Every time I talk to a state that doesn't have a logo for their state-based CI initiatives like OneOki or Show Me CI, I encourage them to formalize those activities. It's a great way to build interinstitutional support between the research institutions down to the smaller regional institutions or the ones that don't have established research computing, to get them to figure out better ways to strategize for state-specific funding opportunities. There's a great track record between OneOki and grants that they've been able to make to be awarded because of that collaboration across the state. We also have within the region a Cyberinfrastructure program committee, which is the research computing leads of each of the research institution members. And that's a fantastic resource to run ideas behind. And in fact, we've been able to be successful at a number of grants spearheaded by those individuals. Real quick, just to give you an idea of some of the compute resources that have been put into the region. The Executive Council funded several years ago what we call Fiona nodes, basically beefy computing storage boxes. And so there's approximately 19 machines now across the region that are contributing in various ways to either that Nautilus project, that friction-free potluck computing, or they're serving purely as a data transfer node within a campus to help speed up movement of data. And it's so exciting to see the fact that, you know, we're working together, we're improving compute without having to take new dollars. Almost all of this came from a seed fund from GPN, but then it gave alignment for grants, both from EPSCoR offices and from subsequent CC Star grants. If you're looking for a more local people community, we have this, I can't talk about Zoom very fondly anymore. There's a lot of Zoom fatigue going on anymore, but we have a regular meeting that we bridge the campus champions, the enterprise folks, the research IT folks, even the state network architects, and we get together and solve problems together, whether it's touching on personar issues, whether it's talking about the latest new no-cost data archiving processes that are being established to help researchers. Those are topics that get brought up in this community. And because of that, because of these activities, we're able to stand up a couple of new grants that have been in practice for a while now. There's the cyber team, which is it was directly funded to the institutions on this map, but it's purposely targeting all institutions in the region. So if you've got any questions or any desire to get into research computing, research storage, this is a team of folks that cover the gambit of support processes. And so encourage anybody to talk to me if they want to have access to any of that. It's NSF funded, it's no cost, and they've been a track record of doing some great things. And there's several members in Kansas on the team. We even have a logo, so that's great. And just to get a few minutes for time, most recently, K-State was awarded the Great Plains Argo project, which has funded, I think this first run it paid for 18 machines, I think based on the dollar amount. I think we're gonna find that they're gonna be delivered by the end of the week. And the great thing about this is it's purely to either onboard existing research computing to contribute to that open science grid that I talked about earlier, or to help be that first machine for a smaller institution to get them to be able to leverage that to access open science grid on behalf of the researchers, but also to help be that device that they can talk about when they seek new grant dollars. So again, a lot of these slides are for you to enjoy afterward, and specifically to ask me questions. There's some really cool tools here. Like if you want to start understanding the researchers that are out there, this link here on this page, you can click that and start exploring all the past research collaborations within NSF and find interesting people. So like if you can see here in this bottom right, I zoomed into one of the projects in Kansas that targeted a couple institutions. But anyway, the homework now that I want to talk about is there's this program here. This is the stat sheet from over a year ago, but it's the campus CC Star program. It's awarded over $100 million. There's been over 300 awards now, but it's something that only a small fraction of our community has gone after. There's a number of different categories that funding is available, and I've been working with the program officer, and this deadline of October 1st is probably going to be the last deadline until October 1st of the following year. They're going to kind of skip a half cycle to kind of revitalize the program. But we have a track record of folks that have done some great things with this. I think I saw somebody from Fort Hays on the call, or when I first saw the participants list, but there's some great success stories across the region, but there's a great opportunity for many more institutions to partner to seek some of these funds. And we have redacted proposals associated with these so that you can actually get a proposal that was awarded and have a copy of it to be able to work from to base your own proposal on. So anyway, like I said, I had homework for you. Encourage you to identify or develop a campus champion, and we can help you with that. Attend or host a workshop. Hosting a workshop is really easy. We can help source instructors, and since you're in Kansas, you even have KU can help you do that and find instructors. But we have 24 across the region that would be happy to help out, especially once we get to be in person again. I'm going to say this isn't bonus. This is a have to. You got to get to the point of submitting a CC Star proposal. Like I said, there's a lot of great successful models out there. Don't forget to reach out to the cyber team and join in on some of the discussions for our platform. I want to invite everybody that if you're not zoomed out, we got the GPN annual meeting is coming up June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and we've got a couple of workshops on the 2nd, and then the regular meetings and breakouts, and we got some incredible speakers set up for that. Again, all the links are in there. Sorry, I don't have a whole lot of time for questions, but now I want to see if anybody turned their video on. There I can finally see everybody. Thank you, Court. I get to see you. Any questions, or did that inspire anyone to take advantage? I mean, a lot of those resources are no cost. They require paperwork. Some of them are no cost, don't even require paperwork. It just means just asking the right question. All of a sudden you can spin up Jupyter notebooks and go to town, trying out and become the next, develop the next incredible model. Oh. I think I see it.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat yet. And I do think that you covered the couple that were already in there.
Okay.
So we can stay on for another minute or so, see if there's any additional questions. Otherwise, I think we have a break until about 3 o'clock today is when the next session start. I'll just post my official thing in the chat here from my to-do list. Thanks for attending the session today, and I'll let you wrap that up, James.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to see all the folks that joined this session. Court has experienced the way I present a few times, and Mary and Gary, I see you on the call. You all have seen, I wanted you to have all the information, and so this slide deck probably has 20 to 5 links. Please click at least a couple. There's just an incredible amount of resources that are out there that are just underutilized by folks in our part of the country, and I hate seeing that. We've got a great track record of helping make connections to get those resources. So let me know if you've got any questions, and we'd love to see you with the cyber team. Or again, Court, I can't say enough about Casey and what they've been doing with Canren to help support this and get the news out. And it's fantastic. I get to see Casey typically during the research platform calls, and he's great for spinning up conversations.
You probably see him more often than I do.
Any questions at all? You don't need your break, right? All right, I'll make sure that the slide deck is provided wherever it needs to be. I'll double check with, I guess, Susie, right?
Yep.
And I'm appreciating, I'll just say this, I'm appreciating the Czech conference. I was able to tune in and there were some eye-opening talks that I saw earlier. So I'm very happy to be able to attend and be part of this. Thank you all.
Thank you.